I've been playing chess for 2 years, coming up on 3, and there's just one thing I'm yet to do, and that is play in an over-the-board tournament and obtain a FIDE rating. Recently, I travelled down to Italy and played in an official FIDE event, a classical tournament. During this tournament, the time control was very slow, it was classical, so it was 1 hour with 30-second increment and 20 minutes bonus time awarded on move 30. This is game 1, let's get into it. So my first opponent was Melanie Patrizia. She was an Italian grandmother. I think she was around 66 years old. She told me her age, I didn't ask, and it's very rude to ask. But I wasn't going to underestimate my opponent. I know these older folks have been around the block, they've just seen everything. There's no one thinking, oh, it's some old granny, I'm going to win easily. I was going into this game fully expecting a good fight, and that's sort of what I got from my opponent. So e4, I always open with e4, e5, knight f3, and knight f6. And this is very funny. We're in Italy, and I played the Italian game against an Italian. So there we go, check that off the bucket list. We see knight to f6, she goes for the 2 knights defense, and I just go knight g5, straight for the 5 liver. Let's get down to business, I'm not mucking about. d5 by my opponent, she finds the best response. And here, she was thinking quite a lot. She thought quite a long time on d5. I was worried she wasn't even going to find the right move. Well, not worried because I don't care, I'm going to win. But it's just a bit of a shame of my opponent if she allowed me to capture on f7 and fork her queen and rook, which wouldn't be very nice. So I capture that pawn, which is the best move. She goes knight a5. Again, she thought for a little while. Again, plays the best move. Top theory here. So, of course, I have theory here as well, but not too much. I don't know this variation too well, as you're going to see. So I go bishop to b5 check, and my opponent doesn't play the top move this time. She's thought for a while. I'm expecting c3. This is the main line of theory. You go c3, I would take, she would take. Now I drop the bishop back here because I find it's a little bit important to control the e4 square. In the position, white is up a pawn, but development is a bit suspicious. Like I'm sitting on my own pawn here. This dark square bishop probably going to have to come out on another diagonal. But I get castles, get my knight out, and it's a little bit tricky. That didn't happen. Instead, because of this, my opponent decided to block the check, and she blocked it with her bishop. Which is a move I was not expecting, and I forgot my prep here, and I thought here for about 5 minutes. And I was just thinking, well, if this is a bad move, and I know it's not top, so I know it's slightly inaccurate, very slightly, the best thing to do must be to capture it, right? So I capture, which is a bit of an inaccuracy. And apparently the best thing I could have done here was play queen to e2, defending my queen, and if she were to capture, I would recapture with check, and if she blocks with the queen, I would just take the knight, and if she tries to block with the knight, well then I can take with the pawn. Of course she wouldn't take it, the game would go on, but queen e2, a much more accurate move there. So instead, I just capture the bishop. Bishop takes on d7, she recaptures with the queen, and I'm thinking, okay, let's just develop. Get my knight into the game, and if for some reason she plays a move knight c4, now I'm thinking, what is that? This is not mine, this is engine analysis giving up these things, this is not my thing, but these are most of these moves I could see there were mistakes at the time. I see this, I'm okay, this is very interesting. And she's moved a piece in the opening twice, well 3 times now actually, and this is almost seemingly for no reason because this knight isn't attacking anything, not at all, not attacking a single thing. So it's just a sort of a nothing move, and here I knew I could take advantage and take my chance, but you can't lazily get advantage here. I think d3 is okay, but you don't want to lose this pawn, so I decided to find a way to make a double attack, create some threats in the position. So queen to e2, threatens the knight, and threatens to win the e-pawn with check, which is very important. And here my opponent played h6, counter-attacking my knight. So here I thought for a while, I was thinking, what's the best way to disarm this move? How do I d-tooth the tiger? And I came to an odd conclusion, a very odd conclusion. I thought, if I'm going to lose this knight, I'm going to pick up her knight. So I might as well get something for my knight. And I decided to sacrifice my knight on f7. Not the best move, but it's perfectly okay. And the idea is, it's a desperado sacrifice to win the f-pawn and win this knight. And I was thinking, if I can just weaken her king a little bit, I could probably get some sort of attack raging on the black king. And also win this knight back, and I'm perfectly happy. So she took with the queen, of course, didn't take with the king. You don't want to lose castling rights. And then queen takes c4. And now my advantage has become something. I've actually won a pawn. I'm up 2 pawns now, actually, because of the Polario defense she played. You lose a pawn, but normally that's sound. But now I'm up 2 pawns, basically for nothing. So she decides to continue developing, very wise. Bishop d6, getting a piece into the game, a good move. So I thought, hey, why the hell not? Let's win another pawn. So I decided to go queen b5 check. Of course, check on the king. She has to respond some way. She decided to block with the knight, and I chose to capture on b7, which is a slightly dubious move. You think, why is it dubious? Well, you allow all sorts of things. Maybe you have rook b8, obviously that would drop another pawn, but after castling, you can get 2 rooks here. My queen is not so happy. It's in a little bit of a precarious position, and it can just get kicked about while black develops their pieces quite naturally. But my opponent decides to wisely castle, preparing to pester my queen with the rooks. I castle, which is apparently a great move according to the computer, just because why not keep developing? My queen isn't attacked, no need to move it again for no reason. Let's just continue to put my pieces on the most optimal squares. And then we see knight c5 by my opponent hitting my queen. And here I was analysing the game with a master, an Italian candidate master, and he recommended that I play the move queen c6. This is actually one of the best moves from the computer, and the idea is it's a queen output. It's not an idea you see very often. So that on the c6 square, the queen cannot be attacked, and it's viewing some prime real estate on the black position. So that would have been a better move, but unfortunately I didn't play that. I played queen b5. Still a reputable choice. My opponent goes e4. This is a move you have to make if you're my opponent, because it shuts down my position a little bit. It's sort of clamping down on that d3 square, and now it's just a tiny bit tricky to get this bishop into the game. So how do I proceed here? I mean, I can move my rook. It doesn't seem very pressing. This pawn is always going to be defended. And I was thinking, wait, can I undefend that pawn? Yes, I can. I strike back with b4. A little bit of an inaccuracy. My opponent has to respond accurately here. She plays the best move, in fact. Queen to h5. You know what, does not just hang a knight? Well, no, there is a checkmate threat on the board. My opponent was hoping I wasn't going to see it and was going to mate me. No, of course, that was not the idea. The idea is just win a tempo, weaken my king slightly, and then move the knight at a later date. So I decided to go g3, basically the only move. And you think, well, aren't these white squares very weak around my king? And I would say, yes, they are. But the problem is, if black square does not have a light squared bishop, it's very hard to exploit this weakening of my king. And now I've really blunted the bishop. This bishop is never really going to be a problem anymore. My opponent now plays a6, which is known as a blunder. It's not a horrible move. It just kicks the queen for no reason. So I dropped the queen back. I think here I probably should have just dropped the queen back all the way to e2. That's where I wanted it. Offered the queen trade, of course, defended by my knight. And I could just diffuse this attack and win an easy game. My opponent plays knight d7, have to defend the knight, obviously. The knight is attacked. It has to move that back. And then queen to e2. I bring my queen back, offering a trade, and this was a very weird moment. My opponent played a move I can never explain. Down 3 pawns, my opponent decided to play queen to f3. I have no idea what she was thinking here. I guess maybe she wanted to try and get a pawn, exploit this weakness by getting a pawn to control that square. So of course I took back with the pawn. And I guess the idea is to maybe try and achieve some sort of checkmate using this back rank motif that we have here, because my king looks like it has breathing room, but the pawn is almost choking my king's air supply on the back rank. But of course, I see this, and it's a classical game, so you can't play for tricks in classical unless they're really sneaky. Because I'm always going to be aware. I mean, I'm seeing the physical board. I see this pawn sitting on my king. It's not like I'm unbeknownst to it. It's very obvious what the plan is here. So of course, I counterplay well. This pawn is hanging. I play the best move, defending at a3. My opponent brings a rook. I get my bishop into the game as a sort of fianchetto. This bishop aiming at the king can't be a bad thing. So knight e5 played by my opponent. And here's a way to simplify. You think, how do I do that? And why do I want to simplify? If we look at the material count, I'm actually up 3 pawns. My opponent doesn't really have any compensation here. So I find the move knight to e4. Why do I play that? Because it hits the bishop. And if I can get that bishop, then black really has nothing. She plays knight c4, counter-attacking my bishop. I'm thinking, okay, and I just take. And the idea is, she can't take me because I'm hitting the rook. She took with the pawn. And I played bishop to c3. Because this pawn is hit, I have to defend it. If I'm up 3 pawns and I start blundering all my pawns, I'm not going to be up anything, and this might end in a draw. So rook to e2 played. She's using this pawn, to be fair, using the pawn, putting some pressure on my second rank. You know, rooks on the 2nd and 7th rank are very strong. You can usually start hoovering up all sorts of pawns, and it can be quite a nuisance. So rook fe1, I decide to trade that sucker straight away. And of course, she can't take, because I would just recapture with my bishop and be up in exchange for a pawn. So rook fe8 played. Computer says it's inaccuracy, but I really don't hate this move. I think if you have one open file in the position, which we do, you might as well put 2 rooks on it. But the problem is this allows me to sort of diffuse the situation, because as you can see, she is threatening checkmate here. Again, mate in 1 is threatened. If I played a random move, she would capture, I would recapture, and she would capture on e1, and that would be checkmate. But it allows me to play a sneaky move. I can kick the knight with d3. You think, wait, doesn't that blunder mate? No, it doesn't. Because I've unveiled, I've uncovered, I've released the bishop on the backwards diagonal, and that defends my rook. So if the capture happens, I would be fine. There would be no mate, because my bishop is there to have the last laugh. So knight b6, she tries to reroute her knight. Rook takes e2, F takes e2. I mean, his pawn is passed, but it's never going to promote. I mean, I have so much control on that square. You'd almost be better off taking with the rook, and at least you have some pressure on the back rank. Rook e1, halting it in its path, and I have a very simple plan here. Well, what is that plan? I can play f3. No matter what happens, I'm going to get my king to f2 and win this pawn. Very simple. So knight takes d5, I don't care. I'm focused on winning this pawn right now. It's sort of top of my priorities list right now. So I slide my bishop back to d2 again, keeping an eye on that e1 square. Knight to f6, f3, here we go, continue with my plan. King's move, and now this pawn is going to be won. There's no way to defend this pawn. I'm going to pick it up, and I'm just going to be up 3 pawns in an endgame. So h5 is played. I capture, she captures, I recapture with my king, of course, and then knight d5. Now, as you can see, if you look at the pawns, counting the material. 4 on the queen side, 3 on the king side. She has 2 on the king side, so king side 3 on 2 wouldn't be winning. But a queen side 4 on 2 is always going to be winning. And I even have a bishop for a knight, which is usually an advantage in endgames such as this. Especially because look at this pawn structure. She has 2 isolated pawns on the queen side, and then connected pawns on the king side, but on the edge of the board. My bishop can just have an absolute field day, try and pick off some of these pawns, and eventually try and get a promotion. So I start advancing the pawns, c4, lunging forwards. My bishop dominates this knight, has to go back. h4, stopping any sort of trying to poke a hole in my structure. I didn't want any of that, so h4, shut that down. Controlling our square. King e6, king e3. The kings are staring each other down. It is a sumo face-off in the middle of the board. g6, g4, h takes, f takes, sorry. And then we have knight e8. Because why is she playing knight e8 here? What's she trying to do? Well, the idea is to reroute the knight, because my pawns control all of the forward advancement of this knight. See, my opponent was sort of looking more and more crestfallen. I was thinking, is she really going to make me play this out? Is she going to make me play like the 30 moves probably required to win this? So I just continue very methodically, bishop c3. And if this knight decides to come here, I will simply capture it, and I'll be in a very easily winning king and pawn endgame. So king f7, king goes back. She doesn't really have many moves here. b5, a takes b, c takes b, knight c7, attacking the pawn. I just defend it. King e6, h5. And after it captures, you can see I have a passed pawn on the queen side. But the thing is, I'm also threatening to have a passed pawn on the queen side. I mean, I have 2 passed pawns on the queen side. Connected even. If I can kick the knight out of here, he's going to have to go back. And I have what's called trousers. The Russians call this trousers because, like 2 legs of the trousers, I have 2 sides of the board with passed pawns. And this king and knight team can defend well. They can only defend one area at once. This knight cannot teleport. They can jump, but he can't teleport. If he goes over here, I will simply promote my h-pawn. If he decides to commit to the king side, I'll simply promote either of my queen side pawns. It doesn't even matter. She played knight d5 check. Looks like a fork. Nope, I'll drop my king back and defend that bishop. I'll be fine. Me and my opponent sort of breathed a sigh of relief, stood up and offered her hand and resigned the game. So that was great. First day, first game, first win, playing the Italian game in Italy, and I was off to a great start in the tournament. So I'll probably cover more of my games from this event. There's plenty of things, plenty of stories to do, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.